Hello, hi, welcome to another Walter Scott Prize for Historical Fiction 2026 video. In these series of videos, I'm going through the long list of the Walter Scott Prize for this year and just giving my general opinions as an everyday sort of reader. This is video number 6, so I'm now halfway through the long list, which is great because the short list is announced in a couple of days. I'm kind of hoping that at least half the books I've read will make the short list, which will mean I've only got another 3 to read that I need to read before the winner is announced. Worst case scenario, I've got another 6 books to read, but I can't see that, especially with The Matchbox Girl and Sea Scraper. I just can't see them not making the shortlist. Anyway, this video is all about Boundary Waters by Tristan Hughes. So, Boundary Waters was a journey for me. But mostly a positive journey, I would say. The parts of it verge quite heavily on the literary side, but then there were other parts where I felt it was a nice balance between literary and story, and there's other parts where I thought the story was great. Overall, I really do enjoy the story, so it really reminds me quite a bit of The Catchers by Zan Brooks from last year on the long list. That didn't make the shortlist. However, because of the additional literary input from this book, it is way more literary than The Catchers. It could be a contender for the shortlist. I do think, for my personal taste, it sided on the literary too much. Just for my personal taste, I'm a simple everyday reader. But that being said, I really enjoyed the story and there is some really lovely language throughout. So Boundary Waters tells the story of Arthur Stanton. And this is why it reminds me of The Catchers. It's about a young man starting a new career, travelling new parts of the country that they've never been to before and having a bit of an adventure on that trip, which is very similar to here. So Arthur Stanton, we're in Canada, I think just the turn of the 1800s, 1804, and Arthur, very sort of, how to describe him, the word's not coming to me, but basically the family moved from England and his brothers are a bit more successful than him. They were quite academic. One of his brothers is a lawyer, the other is like a surveyor, but Arthur wasn't very academic. And one day he's walking down the street where he lives in Canada and he stops outside this business and he says in the book, it could have been any business. He just stopped at this particular one, went in and looked for a job. And that job was with the fur trade. So how it describes in the book, they go off exploring new parts of Canada where there's a lot of danger lying ahead. So these parts aren't completely unexplored by the West maybe, but there is a lot of people who live there that have been there for centuries, the original people to the land. And yeah, the book details Arthur's trip. He hates water, which is really odd because a lot of the fur trade takes them by canoe on the rivers through Canada, exploring these new places, but he actually hates the water, and the first few times he's in this canoe he's feeling seasick, he's all over the place. He's apprenticed to a guy called McLeod or McLeod. I've been calling him McLeod, but it looks a bit more like McLeod, but it's Scottish. He's apprenticed to this guy, and we see the relationship between Arthur and this guy and also the other guys on this trip, who all have funny, weird names. And that's one thing I do like about this book. There's a lot of depth to the characters. I love the characters. They're quite humorous, funny. But yeah, there's a lot of depth to their backstories as well, which makes for an interesting, exciting, adventure. I really like the story. I just verged on the literary a bit too much, but yeah. I'm so torn, but overall I really like the story. Anyway, we follow Arthur. They're in search of these furs, beaver furs, to trade, to sell, to make some money for the company. We see there's a rivalry between the company that Arthur's chosen to work for and another company. The Northwest County is the NWC. Arthur works for the XY company. There's a bit of opposition there, especially when they meet on the road or on the river, but they call it the road. Yeah, we see the opposition there. We see them get stuck out in the outer western regions of Canada during a winter, and we see what happens. Arthur is a bit unlucky in life, a bit unlucky in love, a bit unlucky generally, and we see how his story deteriorates partway through the story, and how he then tries to redeem himself. I wasn't sure if I was going to enjoy the story arc, especially when it got to 2/3 of the way through what was happening to Arthur. I was like, oh, just really again? This guy is so unlucky. But it did redeem himself near the end, to be fair, and I enjoyed his arc. I actually enjoyed a lot of the character arcs in the story. Yeah, I don't know what else to say without giving the whole plot away, but yeah, I'm just 4 stars or 5. It's just okay. I'm gonna go for 5 because, being objective, yes, maybe a little bit too literary for me, but on the whole, great story, some lovely language in there. Obviously, as usual, I want to share a few bits because it's quite humorous throughout. And yeah, it did make me smile as I was reading along with it as well. So just a few bits to show what I mean about the writing and the imagery and also the humour. So firstly, near the beginning, we've got, for he had at least a foot on every one of us, his knees sticking up above the gunwales as if he were a heron sitting in a bath, making an awkward and unusual cargo for these parts. So you just imagine this guy, really tall, big long legs, sitting like a heron in a bath. Also, by then McLeod had come up behind me, looking like someone had hit him on the head with an axe and burnt the gardens of his childhood and then killed his favourite dog. So yeah, I found that quite humorous in the setting that it was in. But yeah, also, as well as the humour, there's also a lot of lovely imagery and language throughout. And this last little part is just when there's a little scuffle between a couple of the voyagers. And it says, as the other voyagers tried to disentangle them, they became twined together until they were a growing ball of men, a writhing composite, like snakes gathering for warmth in the first frosts of autumn. So there is a lot to love about this. Even if it touches on the literary from my own personal taste, I still found quite a lot to love. I was grappling between, can I give it the 5 stars or is it the 4? A bit like Eden Shore, where it just felt a bit too clever for me. That's not to say that it's be too clever for other people. This will definitely sort of tend to go towards the people that love a literary story. But I can't ignore the whole package. And yes, there's a lot of lovely language, some lovely writing, and just a really great story. Saying that, it's still not up there in my top 3 with the 6 that I've read so far. It's probably above Eden Shore, which I really feel really bad saying, because Eden Shore is really great as well. It's a really good adventure story, but it just was maybe a bit too adventurous for me in the writing. But I still really enjoyed it. Whereas this sits above that, but probably, I say, not in the top 3. But that's no, negative thing towards any of the books, any of the stories, or any of the authors, because they're also bloody brilliant. I mean, to be on a long list for a literary prize, you have to be brilliant, and they are. It's just a personal taste, and this is what these videos are. It's just my personal taste, nothing against any of the books or the authors. I really enjoy this story. If you like a good story, something inventive, if you read The Catchers from last year, then I think you probably enjoy this, even though it's a bit more literary. There's only a few parts that I didn't follow along, and I had to maybe reread just to understand fully what I was reading, because I'm a bit dense. And I did have to get a dictionary out a couple of times for a few words, but, that's no surprise for me. But ignoring those parts, because they were very small parts on the whole, yeah, if you like a good story, don't mind a bit of literary language, and it's not overly, it really isn't overly. I've read way more literary stuff. Yeah, 5 stars. Let's do it, 5 stars, otherwise I keep going on. So there. Excuse me, that is my thoughts on Boundary Waters. Good story, lovely language, maybe verging on the literary for my own personal taste, but that didn't really negate away from the enjoyable experience that I had reading the story. You really do become quite connected with Arthur and his struggles. You almost kind of, feel a bit sorry for him, and you kind of want to know what happens to him next. You know, what happened? Did he succeed in what he wanted to do? Hopefully. You know, he's a nice, sort of naive little chap. But that's my thoughts on Boundary Waters. Let me know if you've read it or anything else from the long list. What do you want to make the shortlist? I'm probably not going to be finishing another book before the shortlist announced. I'll do a video for the shortlist, making maybe a couple of predictions, and then live on camera seeing what the shortlist is, as long as they reveal it in time. And yeah, I'll carry on my journey reading through. I will read the whole long list at some point. I will obviously prioritise the books that make the shortlist first, just so I know I've definitely read them before the winner's announced. So that's all for now. Thanks again for watching, as always. Again, if you've read anything from the long list and you've got any suggestions what you want me to read next, or what you think is going to make the shortlist, let me know. Until next time, thank you. Bye.